Let's compare the engine bay of our 7.3 liter gas V8 to the engine bay of our 6.7 liter PowerStroke diesel. Under the hood of the PowerStroke, there's just so much stuff going on, and I will say it is quite a bit more difficult to work on this truck and a little bit difficult to upfit this truck with the available room in the engine bay. For example, under the hood of the 7.3, when you look here at your upfitter switch bundle, you can see that you have clear access to this thing. You can reach under it. You've got all this room to wire, and it's just a lot easier to deal with when you're dealing with your PowerStroke. You have quite a bit less room, and it's harder to get to your upfitter switch bundle. And then furthermore, if you ever need to remove your battery tray on this truck, you really have to finesse it out, and it is quite a bit more difficult. So much of this side of the engine bay is just full of emissions components. Basically, all this is going to be emissions related, and yeah, it makes it hard to work on. With the 7.3, you have so much more room. The exhaust manifolds on this vehicle could be serviced. You got room to get your hands in there. I mean, you can go straight down through here to the ground. I mean, there's so much room in this engine bay. So definitely easier to work on. Spark plug service would be easy when needed, which would be rare. I mean, these trucks don't require even plug maintenance very often. It's something that is needed after probably 50,000 miles or so. I don't know the exact numbers on that, but it's not something that needs to be done regularly on these trucks. But looking at this, you can see that a lot of the value is the serviceability, the longevity. When you think longevity on these, they're pretty equal. The diesels, historically have been motors that just last longer, but not so much the case now. These engines, the gas or the diesel, when you think longevity, I think they're probably pretty equal, unless the diesel's completely deleted. Then maybe the diesel can last a little bit longer, but really when you think about the value of either one, it's not so much just the longevity. And if it were with emissions, you could probably make an argument that this motor is going to last longer than a diesel with emissions. The real value would be the fuel usage over long hauls. That's where the diesel would really excel and show its colors. Otherwise, not that huge of a difference or benefit with the diesel. But looking at this engine bay here, you can see on this 7.3 we've got the dual alternators right there on top. Super easy to service. Let's take a look at the 7 or the 6.7. We've got the dual alternators as well here, but they're positioned a little bit differently, and the serviceability a little bit harder because you've got tons of plumbing over here over this one, and you've got your air intake here over this one. But all in all, the 7.3 liter Godzilla V8 has a beautiful engine layout. It looks to be extremely serviceable. What I really also like is how they've changed over the years. Their air intakes have gotten so much better. As you can see, you have a direct flow of cold air hitting your filter, not going around your battery like older models. They'd have this battery right here, and then the air had to go up under the battery and around it and all that. Not the case anymore. We've got air filter media right there. You've got a direct shot straight into the motor. I mean, yeah, cold air intakes are still nice, but really, they've just made these factory ones so efficient. Now, I'm sure you can get the Banks, and when Banks finally comes out with one for the 7.3 liter Godzilla, and it'll sound a lot better and all that without all these baffles and whatever this stuff is. And I'm sure you'll gain some performance in that sense. But to say that it's going to be significant, I mean, the way that these are set up, there's really no need for a cold air intake. Although it will be nice to have that, and it will dress up the engine bay and all that. Not really something that's necessary anymore with the way the OEMs have come out with their air intakes. But all in all, beautiful engine bay, incredibly serviceable, great engine, and just I've been very happy with this truck so far. So what good can be said about the 6.7 liter PowerStroke? Now with this engine, yes, you do get the added maintenance, the headache of the emissions, the added filters. You got a fuel filter there. You've got one under the truck. A lot more maintenance, a lot more money every time you maintenance the truck. And you've got the dreaded CP4 failure that is possible down the line. It takes out your whole fuel system, and it could cost in excess of $10,000 to fix everything. And there are kits that you can buy, like the disaster prevention kit from like SNS, or other companies have them as well. And then again, you end up making your engine bay even a little more crowded. I think the SNS filter goes over there, and then you've got another filter. Great, we need another filter under here. Now, what good can be said though about this engine? 1,050 foot-pounds of torque. You also get 430 horsepower, so insane amount of power. It is comparable though to the 7.3. The 7.3 is that engine that's going to get the job done, and it's going to get the job done well. What I've found though from my usage, and I'm not the guy that's taking the 6.7 PowerStroke to the max. I'm a guy, I tow with the truck, I use the truck. I'm not someone that doesn't use the truck. I'm pulling 10,000 pounds, and a lot of people will get mad about that. They say, you're not pulling enough, you got to pull 30,000. Yeah, and they're probably right. I get it. You should get only as much as you need. But in this case, I've got a little extra power. And in my opinion, you can never have too much truck. But having all this extra power compared to the 7.3, what I've noticed is it's a lot more fun if you're driving empty. So for my loads, when I'm hauling, 7,000, 8,000, 10,000 sometimes, overall probably around 16,000, but 10,000, whatever. When you're hauling that kind of weight, the 7.3 and the 6.7, they're very comparable, because you can't really go that fast anyway. When you're towing that weight, you're kind of limited to a certain speed. You're not going to be accelerating that fast anyway, so it doesn't really make that big a difference to have the diesel, aside from the fuel economy and just the expandability of the diesel platform is so nice. You can add a bigger fuel tank. The 450 straight up comes with a 48-gallon tank. It's nice that you're not always at the fuel station, even though you're paying more, a little bit more for fuel, even though you are getting better MPG, but not that much better. It's nice to be able to fill this thing up and be able to go further without having the inconvenience of stopping. Because even though fuel's more money, and in business, stopping is money too. Like, constantly stopping for fuel is money. This thing, you fill it up and you go and do work. We'll say we work all night. We work through the night, plowing snow, whatever. Guess what? This thing is going to be full for 20 hours of work. Compared to the gas, will be, after a certain period of time, you got to go back out and you got to get some more fuel, and that's a little bit annoying. And say if you got a truck full of guys or whatever, not a big deal. You probably got to stop anyway. But yeah, you got to think. With the 450, you don't have to think about fuel. You fill it up, you're good to go. With the 250s and the 350s, the gas engines, they burn it up, and they don't have those big tanks. So you get a 48-gallon tank with the diesel in the form of an F450, and then you can buy 60-gallon tanks and stuff like that for your diesel trucks. But you can't do that with the gas trucks. At least right now, I think there are some companies coming out with expanded fuel tanks for the gas trucks. Now, another good thing about this engine is corrosion, actually, believe it or not. On the gas engine, and the 7.3 is no exception, you have your exhaust manifolds right up in here in the wheel wells. And when you look in the engine compartment at the wheel wells, you can see right there your exhaust manifolds. Now, even though they do have this heat shield on it, it does look like Ford went ahead on the 7.3 and made some efforts. What happens is, you see these exhaust manifold bolts, well, they rot out bad, and particularly where they're located. They get blasted with road grime from the tires, and they inadvertently rust out, and they become pretty nasty over the course of a few years. Now, maybe the 7.3 is an exception, because as we look in here, it does appear that our heat shields are providing some protection, some coverage. But nonetheless, what I've found from these trucks, the Ford trucks, is the iron exhaust manifolds can be expensive to fix, and they can rust and rot and end up looking pretty bad. As you can see on this 6.2 liter that's been in service for a couple of years, that pretty heat shield that was on there has fallen off, rotted away, and it's gone. And it's been blasted with road grime because it is right here by this tire, and it gets kicked. Everything gets kicked up in there. Now with the 6.7 POWERSTROKE, you look up into the same area and you just don't see any components to rust. I mean, you got your engine block there, but you don't see any exhaust manifolds. Now, why is that? The engine's exhaust actually comes up through the middle of the motor. The exhaust does not exit through the lower portions of the mower. So there's nothing down there. There's no exhaust. There's nothing there to rot out. Everything's up top. Your exhaust comes straight up through the middle because this engine actually flows reverse. It's one of the only reverse flow diesels out there. It is definitely the only reverse flow diesel in a pickup. So nothing is down near the wheel wells where corrosion. Now maybe a Cummins is similar, and not in the sense that it's a reverse flow. It's not even a V-type engine, but the exhaust in the Cummins might be quite a ways away from the wheel wells, being that it's an inline six. But with the 6.7 being reverse flow, it surprisingly has probably an unintended benefit of not having rotted out, corroded exhaust manifold studs, at least from our experience. Now, some salt and grime does get up into here in the motor, very little though compared to down on the sides. And just, it's funny because it's one of those things where it's like, you don't plow with a diesel, because there's added cost and all that, which is true. But that's one little benefit to actually plowing with the diesel, because this does kind of pertain to plow trucks. That kind of exhaust manifold rot that you've seen on my truck is probably not normal and more related to just being in these conditions. When you look down at the wheel well area, even if you were driving in snow and salty roads a lot, if the wheels are mostly straight, everything gets thrown around in that direction. But when you're plowing snow and your wheels are always turned, now you're throwing your snow and salt and everything up into your exhaust manifolds. Just not an issue though with the 6.7, because all your hot exhaust is kept in the middle. Everything, your exhaust manifolds, all that, it's all in the middle. And then your intake isn't real low like it is, like you would think. I mean, it's not down. You don't see your intake manifold down in your wheel wells, I don't think. So let's look in here on this side. We've got some lines. Those lines, I think they're power steering. They could use some love. I should probably spray those. But you don't have exhaust manifolds. You don't have components like that along the sides of the motor by the wheel wells. So a little hidden benefit to the 6.7. But all in all, both engines are cool. You've got the 6.7 for the guy that makes no compromises. You've got the most amount of power, best in class torque, best in class horsepower, I believe, at the time of filming this. I don't know, the competition's crazy, but the best that you can get, at least right now with the Ford, 1,050 foot-pounds of torque. You can tow anything, versus the savvy guy. He's thinking about all the bottom lines and everything like that. Can tow what's needed. Perfect engine, good fuel economy, great towing, just a great engine as far as drivability. Dare I say, drivability is better on the 7.3, at least in the form that we have with the F350 430 geared, compared to a F450 that is also 430 geared. I'm going to go ahead and say that drivability is better on the 350. But anyway, just a quick comparison of the engine bays. I know I kind of went afield a little bit in the video with a little bit more than just the engine bays. But anyway, comment below and tell me what you think about the video. My name is Sean. This is DS Trucks. Hope to see you in the next video. Over and out.